All right, so let's get started. I'm going to have you, as you are able, to put your hands like this. And when I say clap, I just want you to clap. Give me a clap. Give me a clap. Give me a clap. Give me a clap. Look this side. Why did I do this? People are like, why do you do that? I'm like, because then college students have to put their phones down. And people are like, God, you're so engaging. I'm like, well, their shit is down now. So I'm going to say some statements. And if this resonates with you, if you're like, yes, I agree with your statement, just give me a clap. And if it doesn't, you don't have to clap. And if somebody next to you doesn't clap, you can still be civil and not get mad at them. So here we go. If this is your first child who is going to college, give me a clap. If this is your one and only child going to college, give me a clap. Whew. If you've done this before once, give me a clap. You've done it twice, give me a clap. Ooh. If you've done it 3 times, give me a clap. Any Catholics? Okay, we're good. All right. We're good. Okay, good. If your child knows, like they've made the decision, they've pinned the board, the X has gone out, like you're done, give me a clap. If you are in a mental state of transitions and we don't know and we're waiting on things, give me a clap. If you've cried sometime this year about your transitioning out, give me a clap. If your child's getting on your nerves a little bit this year, senior year, give me a clap. All right, good. Yes. Okay, good. All right. So I usually, I'll tell you, I get to travel across the country. I have what I call a dream job. I get to talk to college students. To be honest, I talk to the people who are in trouble, which is mostly fraternities and sororities because we still get in trouble. So I do a ton of work. I worked for a men's national fraternity for 17 years doing risk and prevention, where a lot of this stuff is framed in my head of what I'll talk about tonight. And by day, I also, right now, for the past 8 years, I've worked for groups called Holmes Murphy Fraternal Practice. And we have 90 fraternity and sorority clients. I do education work, prevention, evidence-based approach work with our clients, ranging from NPC sororities to all 9 MPHC groups to IFC groups, like the whole gamut. And so I've spent my whole life kind of working in higher education in a very weird, different kind of way. And several years ago, I'm trying to think.
Come here, Kev.
Can you silence? Where's my tech ring? Can they get silenced? Maybe. I don't know, maybe. So I've spent my whole life doing this work. And a few years ago, I think there was a university that asked me to do an orientation program, which is kind of where this idea of transitions came into play. And then I started working on it. And then I was like, oh, this is good. And then somebody at some point said, do you talk to parents? I'm like, sure, I talk to parents. Usually with college students, I cruise in with a PowerPoint and like no prep, and I just go. With parents, I've become a fundamental crazy person. Like I have been deep reading all day long because it's good for me to stretch myself to make sure we do the program right tonight. But one of the quotes I've often read, which kind of led to this program, and it's from The Air You Breathe. It says, in life, there are countless firsts and there are even more last. The first are easy to recognize when you've never experienced something before, a kiss, a new style of music, a place, a drink, a food. You know exactly when you're encountering it for the first time. But the last nearly always surprise us. It's only after they disappeared that we realize we'll never again have that particular moment or that person or that experience. You are in a transitional season of last, and it's a weird year, it's a hard year, it's a beautiful year, but what we are doing right now is transitioning these 18, 17, 19-year-olds into the next phase of their life, where you're still going to be needed, you're still going to be valued, but it is going to look different. I sat in your shoes a year ago, in here, maybe I was a speaker, I don't know. But I sat here last year and I did senior year, and I will tell you there's nothing like senior year. It is amazing. And I think Mount Vernon really caters to parents and makes it a part, it's special for them. And there were things to go to and friendships formed, friendships I still have today. And I sat here and I will tell you, my son, I was a single parent for a long time. So I played mother and father in his life for a long time. My family was career military and Army. And sophomore year, he identified, or I told him, you need to look at the military. I think this fits you. And I ushered him into the path. And so we traveled to military academies. We did the nomination things. And by we, you shouldn't say we, but I'm gonna tell you what, if your kid applies to military academy, it's freaking we. It was a lot of we, because there is a lot to manage. So he where we started and where he ended was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought he was looking at Air Force. He was last day Air Force released. He was not invited to the Air Force. But along the way, he had an early admittance to the Coast Guard Academy, which was not really where like we thought, this was going. He went to visit 3 times. They invited him to come. We hung out, and he kind of fell in love with the Coast Guard. And if you know my kid, it kind of fit him. I think it fit the mission. He didn't want to kill people, like he wanted to save people. He's an Eagle Scout. Like a lot of this stuff just kind of fit him. So I go, dun, 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 we prepare all year long for the drop-off. And all of you right now are preparing for a drop-off. And you're thinking about it. See, the mom are like, yes. The dads are like, what drop-off? Yes, to college. And so I dropped him off. And I'll tell you, it's not an easy drop-off because you're dropping off July 1st and you will see them Thanksgiving. It was a drop-off. But we sat with the superintendent who got up, who was a very savvy man. And he said this. He said, week 1, we're going to medically test these people. We're going to poke at every prod and we're going to get to them. And he said, there will be people medically disqualified this week. Week 2, 3, and 4, we're going to ramp up leadership, or we're going to ramp up stress. We're going to induce stress. Then we're going to introduce leadership and we're going to teach them perseverance. Then 4, 5, and 6, we'll get them ready for school. So I knew these were going to be the hardest weeks of his life. Day 5, he called me. They don't have phones. They're not supposed to call. And he was medically disqualified. See, I said it without crying. And I remember he had 4 minutes. And I really need to call Christy and tell her the story, or somebody, Trish. He had 4 minutes. He said, I have 4 minutes. And he was it was like, and I couldn't understand. I was like, appeal, everything can be appeal, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. He said, I failed an eye exam. They pulled me back to the medical stuff. I took an exam I'm supposed to be taking junior year. The doctor, he said, this doctor sat with me and cried and said, they're going to tell you to appeal. You will never pass an appeal. Braden, you are as low as green goes, like low. So then I was like, so we shouldn't appeal? I'm like, in 2 minutes. And so I said, okay, so you've cried for 2 minutes. What are you doing? He said, I'm hanging up. I'm calling Mr. Maddox at University of Tennessee. My Army ROTC scholarship is still alive, and I'm going to see if I'm qualified for the Army. When you talk about how this school prepares kids, that said to me that you did everything you were supposed to do. Hands down. There's going to be moments where it ain't working. You give them 2 minutes to cry, you have to give them the 2 minutes to get up. And if you just sit here, you're not going to teach them the resilience they need. And he taught me that day. I was like, well, wait, where are you going? What do you do? So he called, and the Army ROTC scholarship was alive. And in the course of 2 days, if you know Braden, he's kind of, if he wants something, it's like a hangnail. So anybody who had a phone, he's like, can you look up Army eye qualifications? Like anybody. And he ended up, he's at University of Tennessee. He's in the Army, and life looks different. For a person who does this for a living, it was tough to swallow. It was hard to swallow this, but I was so grateful that we knew how to do it because of what the school gave him. So I start there to tell you, this might not work out how some of you want it to work out. Letters are coming out. It might not work out. Everybody's awesome. Everybody has a 4.0. Everybody does service because we make them do service. Like it is hard in this competitive world. But your job is to support on the side and figure out how to help them land. So here's a little bit of my story and how we transition into college. Hold, please. Okay. I said mute all, didn't I? Or did I not? We'll try it. Oh, well, don't talk. We'll see. We'll see. So my parents, give me a clap if you are an only child, give me a clap. Give me a clap if you're the oldest child, give me a clap. Give me a clap if you're the youngest child, give me a clap. Give me a clap if you have 3 older siblings, give me a clap. Okay, so I was the youngest. This is why we like each other, Marilyn. And my parents, I had a brother that went to West Point. I had a brother that went to Southern Tech the next year. I had a brother that went to Auburn. And so when I was number 4, like literally it was like, well, do you want to go to West Point, Southern Tech, or Auburn? And I'm like, what? Like they were done. They were tired. They were like, get out of here. And so I landed at Auburn, honestly. Like there was no college visits. I landed at Auburn. This is my freshman residence hall. For those of you who went to Auburn, any Auburn people in here, this is dorm 9, Helen Keller dorm. Anybody? All right. It was a great place to grow up. I walked in, I had 2 roommates in a dorm room. They were both smoking cigarettes, like, and I was like, ah. But what was happening in the fall of 1988 has a lot to do with what's happening on American college campuses today in weird ways, or how it all connects. These emergency lights, give me a clap if you remember seeing the emergency lights on your college campus. Okay, good. So in the fall of 1987, there was a young woman at Lehigh University, Jean Cleary, who was murdered. She was raped and murdered in a residence hall. And that rape and murder led to what is known as the Cleary Act, what was just revised last year as the Cleary Safety Act. So as you are thinking about colleges and looking at colleges, it's always good to go look at that Cleary Safety Act, because it is mandatory reporting by the university to see what is happening on their campuses. I don't think parents even know about it or look at it, but I'm like, this is a great indicator of what you're looking at. Oftentimes in our work of higher education, we use stories, like people tell stories, but oftentimes the data is where you really need to be focused. But I often hear, and I get in rooms with friends of mine, and they're just repeating stories of their college, and I'm like, it's not like that, it's not like that, it's not like that. So make sure you're paying attention to the data. But in the fall of 1988, we know that college is dangerous because Jean Cleary has now been murdered, and we're coming off Ted Bundy with 70 murders like in the 1970s. And so the message to me as a woman was, college is dangerous. Women, give me your clap if you remember somebody saying college is dangerous. It is dangerous, dangerous. And we often tell women, don't walk alone at night. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So I was pulled into my mandatory meeting as a freshman, and I was told this: never walk alone at night. It's very dangerous. You're going to get raped, harmed, mugged, injured. I'm like, well, this is riveting. You know, I'm like, huh. And they also said things like, carry mace. I mean, if you're a product of when I went to school, we all had that mace walking around, like idiot. Like, I mean, I'm surprised we didn't activate it in our own faces with alcohol. Like, I'm like, what was that? And then they also said, if you walk alone at night, you must call a phone number. It's called 844-4244 at Auburn. And there was a walking system. So men would volunteer to come walk the women to keep us safe. And I thought to myself, I'm a little crazy person if you haven't picked up on it. I thought, what if the man signs up for the program just to get easier access? You know, like, what? It's like walking Tinder for a tax. You know, I was like, what is going on? But I'm going to tell you what. College, for all of us or any of us who went, they have these immeasurable moments where you remember something and it follows you your whole career. It's accident or on purpose, I don't know, but that meeting pissed me off. One, it was gendered, right? We're worried about women's safety. We are still today only talking about women's safety on college campuses and not men's safety enough, and I stand by that. Two, it put fear in me. Like, for the first time, like, it put this fear in me. And I remember the message was, she was like, if you get raped, harmed, attacked, mugged, you just need to crawl to the blue light. Like, I was just, and she would literally like crawl to the blue light. And I'm like, and so I thought, well, what if the man walking me attacks me? And I was like, well, I'll just crawl to the blue light. Like, I would, like, literally, as a freshman student, my only strategy was to crawl to the blue light. And this is also when you didn't call your parents, because it was like 36 cents a minute to call. So you maybe talked to them for 3 minutes on a Sunday. Like, you weren't processing with them. And so I thought, crawl to the blue light. That story has stuck with me so much that somehow I've been concerned about student safety ever since then. Like, it has literally been the one thing that has connected all of my dots, because I know there is much more that we can be doing, and there's much more that you can be helping coach on the side of how do we do this work. So let's think for a minute about what is the work and what do we want. I want you to think for just a minute about your hopes, your dreams, and your aspirations. This is old Stephen Covey stuff. Hopes and dreams and aspirations. All things in our lives have two creations. There's mental creations, there's physical creations. The physical creation will stop at college drop-off. Like, that's when it like starts. And the thing about that physical creation is, for the first time, young people are responsible for their lives, their choices, their decisions, and they're held accountable to it. And you think you can operate on the side, but really, for the first time, they are responsible. So right now, you're in the seasons of hopes and dreams and aspirations. You're doing the tours, you're visioning, you have stretched schools, you have safe schools, like, you're doing all the things. You want them to go out and achieve great things in the world. So talk or think for just a minute about, what do you hope for your child in college? What do you hope they achieve? Who do you hope they become? How do you hope college will change them? So everybody just think about that for a second. Anybody want to talk out loud? What do you hope for your kiddo? You get a job. Okay, the J-O-B. I like it, with insurance preferably before they're 26. Yep, get a job. Be happy. Make good friends, make great friends. Stay out of trouble. This is good. I once had a good friend of mine, her son got in trouble freshman year at Georgia Tech, and she sent me the conduct link. She was like, do you know any of these people? I was like, I actually know all of them. And she was like, will you help me? I'm like, absolutely not. And then she said, but he won't be able to study abroad. I'm like, well, he stole a stop sign. You know, she's like, he wasn't even drinking. I'm like, that makes it worse. um, and you know, and she just wanted it to, you know, I'm like, he will learn in trouble. How many of you got in trouble when you were little? Give me a clap, right? Like the whole mystery is we want these kids never to get in trouble, but our whole lives are built on kind of getting in trouble and learning from it. But today it feels so much heavier about getting into trouble. Okay, anybody else? Stay out of trouble, get a job, make some friends along the way, be happy along the way. Anybody else? Make it through. Yes, graduate. Good. He's a winner. This is Miss America. I'd be crowning you right now. Okay, find purpose, find a goal, find something bigger that you want to be a part of. That's a really good answer, actually. So we're gonna tap into that just a little bit. So how do they get there? How do they get to a place where they stay out of trouble, where they connect, where they find friends, where they find purpose in life, and then they go out and hopefully build a career? Let's dig into that. Gallup-Purdue, this is a 10-year-old study, but it is still the only study out there that I can find that speaks to the words I want to say to you tonight. And so sometimes we use research to say things we want to say anyway. In 2014, Gallup-Purdue went and they found 30,000 college graduates, and they surveyed them. And they surveyed these working adults who were in with jobs, and they said, are you thriving in the workforce? Kind of like, are you happy? Is this working? Is this good? And if so, tell me how does college connect to this? What did you need to do in college? And so what they came back with is they said this. The Purdue research says a couple things. One, you need to hear. It's not where you go to college, it's what you do when you get there. Compelling research, and we all need to get untied in our, wrapped up in our, you know, our stuff, but we do. We got to undo that and go, it's not where you go, it's what you do when you get there. Because that's when the purpose starts. This research was able to identify several things. Students who had one professor in college who made me excited about learning. Professor at college cared about me as a person, and I had a mentor that encouraged me. People who worked on a project that took more of a semester, people who had internships, people who had extracurricular activities. All of these things. The people who go to college and just do college, right? I'm just going to do a football game. I'm just going to kind of go to class. I'm just going to get through. That impacts them their whole lives. And it impacts their ability to go out in the world and do this. I think what Mount Vernon, and I could work for admissions. I think what Mount Vernon did well, and hopefully has done well for you, is they've created a version of this, right? They've got ID programs, they've got interims, they have office hours. Like Braden came home from his first class and he was like, oh my gosh, this instructor. And he starts telling me all about her. And you know, he's at a big state school now. I'm like, well, how many people are in the class? He's like, 300. And he's like, well, I looked her up on LinkedIn and she is the most qualified person I've ever seen. Like, and he starts telling me all this stuff. I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, I went up and talked to her about it. She was like, why are you teaching here? You know, like, and I'm like, you know, but she talked about the practical education and why she wants to work with students. Like, that is all Mount Vernon in action. So part of the things that they're doing here, you need to pay attention to, because what you're going to have to help them do is lift it and go do it out there. And the same skill set that works in that building over there should be the same skill set that works in college. And so if your kids have done high school pretty good and easy, make sure they remember what are those things that they were doing here, those factors, because what we need students to do, it's not about where you go. When you get there, they need to have engagement with their professors. They need to have internships. They need to have like something that matters to them. They need to get involved in extracurricular, and all of that helps them go out into the world and thrive just a little bit more. All right, so let's fast forward. It's now August. I love traveling in August. I work my ass off in August. It is a hard month for me, but I get excited at college drop-off day because I like to pull over and watch you all. And it's hilarious. Like, if I could film it, I could probably go to a TV and produce this stuff, because when it is college drop-off day, most of you will go to a place where it's going to be very hot where you're dropping off. It's very hot, and the university is going to be so kind to give y'all lemonade. It's lukewarm. And they will be giving you lemonade that is lukewarm. And then there will be people in big shirts out there going, welcome to college, like, welcome to college. And if you got the sorority fraternities out there moving you in, it's like even worse, like, welcome to college. And you're like, thanks. And then you see all the things. I'm about to make fun of all of us because I'm divorced, so I can make fun of divorced people. Like, my favorite is when you see like the mom and the dad who are divorced, but then they've remarried and they're all four there. And then like inevitably that wife, the second wife, she's like 20, like I'm like, and then you watch the standoff of who gets to hug last. Like you see it all. You're going to see this in August and laugh. You're going to be like, oh my God, she's right. And then you see like the transitional moment and you see the hugs goodbye. And then you see people weeping, and the kids are like, yeah, this is the biggest transitional moment of a child. But the irony is it's the biggest transitional moment, I think, for adults more so. Because what you know at that time is you are sending them into the world. And you are trying to scream the last chapter, okay, here's the things I need you to remember. How many of you, if you went to college, you remember at that transitional drop-off, someone saying to you, give me a clap. How many of you remember somebody saying to you, son, make good choices? How many of you remember to make good choices? Give me a clap. But will you let, anybody remember somebody telling you to make good choices? Give me a clap. Anybody? No. Okay. Your mom didn't even take you. I mean, it's like we all need therapy for something, like, how many of you remember though, before you went to college, somebody looking at you and telling you that you were loved? Give me a clap. How many of you who have dropped kids off, all of you, you looked at your kid and said, make good choices? Give me a clap. How many of you said, I love you? Give me a clap. This is the eternal advice that we leave with students today, maybe not in the 80s, because you're right. Now, I don't know if my mom or dad said that to me, but maybe they did. I don't know. But this is what kids are left with. They need to make good choices. They need to love each other. I could either go and do a stand-up comedy routine about this, or I could tell you how this is the best information you could leave your kid with. Because the reality is what we know around the research and the science is that when you make a series of good choices, you feel better about yourself. Again, I work with students, college students. I work with the people who mess up. And like, I'll be talking to these old alumni. They're like, if they would just get some self-esteem. I'm like, they slept upside down on a beanbag last night after 17 shots. I don't think she's going to have self-esteem today. Like when you make better choices, you feel better about yourself. And that's it. That's the science of well-being. And we got to see all the women laugh at that. The men are like, what? Like, and the other piece of this is when we love ourselves, we do better. And this actually applies to us in our lives every single day. The more we make a better choice, the better we feel. The more we love ourselves, the better we do. But here is the challenge. You're going to drop people off without fully developed brains. And so you're dropping them off. Female, male brain don't develop fully until they're 25. Risk area part of the brain, it is alive and well at 18. It's alive and well senior year. Like it is alive and it is well. And so what's the risk area part of the brain? It's part of the brain when you leave and you're supposed to make good choices. Somebody walks in and was like, would you like to drink vodka and do something illegal, immoral, and unethical? And they're like, hell yeah. Yes, I would. I want to be illegal, immoral, and unethical. And it is also clouded by stories that we tell young people today that college is the last time in your life you're ever going to have fun. Like I hear it all the time, like this is the best time of your life. Don't tell them that, because I don't think it is. Like they are in transition. So they're thinking, if this is the last time I'm ever having fun, this is it. I was in Cabo San Lucas when Braden was little, and it was spring break. I was there doing a fraternity program at this compound of this billionaire. And I took Braden with me, not realizing like the treachery of spring break. And like this guy is on a stage in Cabo. He's like he's got college women lined up. He is pouring things in their mouths. And they're like, and he just kept resonating. This is the last time you'll be in Cabo. This is the last time. This is the last time you'll be in college. And I'm thinking, if you would stop drinking, perhaps you could get a timeshare here. Like this can't be this treacherous, that this is the last time. So normalize the good stuff, but also remember the hard stuff of college too when you're talking about it. Like it can't all be college was the best time for me, and therefore it must be the best time for you, because for some of them, frankly, it's not going to be their best time. It's just going to be that transitional time. So when they become 25 and they find themselves and they find their purpose, they'll find their best time. So sitting up here is called the prefrontal cortex, part of the brain that deals with judgment and reason. Says not a good idea. It says if you do this, you will die. If you do this, you'll lose your scholarship. If you do this, it's going to be a problem. It's not fully developed. So parents, what is our role in this? You still play the role of a prefrontal cortex. You still play the role of what is in the sandbox. You still play the role of having expectations for them. And having transitioned, I will tell you, I have not wavered on what I expected of him much from when he was in high school versus not. And last year I had one of the senior moms, she was like, "You're very hard on him." And I'm like, "Thank you." And I said to her, I was like, "There's 1% of people who serve our country. If he can't follow the federal law now, you think you want him hitting a bomb to blow you up? No, like, yes, it is my job to be hard on him. But if we want moral leaders in our companies, in our churches, in our synagogues, in our lives, like, it is our job to keep a high expectation of how we show up with these young people. And they desperately need it. And I promise you, they will warm up to it. I work for men's fraternities. Trust me, they need to hear, and they hear it, and they can receive it, and they can get better for it. So what's going to influence little Tommy from making good choices and loving each other? So here's kind of the cycle for our brand new people. First thing you're going to do, you're going to drop off, then you're going to leave. And the first thing they're going to be surrounded with is like an interpersonal network. So the good news is if your child moves in, and residence halls have a lot of matching today, so it feels like Tinder for living. You know, you're like, you know, if they're like, "I don't like alcohol," and the door shuts, that person goes, "I don't like alcohol either." You know, if they're like, "I don't do drugs," and that other person was like, "I love cocaine," you know, you're like, "Ah!" Like, if they move in and they immediately connect with people who are like them, college drop-off is going to feel a lot easier. The challenge is you might in 2 days get the call, "I hate college. I hate college. I hate it." Part of what they hate is they just haven't found a network yet. So when they say, "I hate college," here's your response. You're going to be like a fake counselor. Tell me what you hate specifically. You're not going to be like, "Oh, I hated college too. I hated it too." We don't care. We don't care. We don't care about any of our college stories anymore. Like, what do you not like about college? And if they say, "Well, I haven't met anybody," well, your next question is going to be, "Have you left your room?" Because now they got these little buzzing machines around who just serve the food. You know, like I'll go in meetings at universities, they're like, "We need to talk about well-being." And I'm like, I just had to step around 8 robots to get in this room, and they're delivering their Chick-fil-A to the room. So first well-being is let's make them walk outside and pick it up. They're like, "That's a fascinating point." I'm like, "Well, I'm charging you." You know, like, it's not hard, people. It's not hard. But if they move in with people that they know, good. Like, and if and I watch it with, I mean, now even like that little Mount Vernon crew of Braden's friends, they're still getting together. They're still finding each other. They are still like, I talked to Sebi the other day. He's like, "I am calling Braden once a week," and I'm like, "Thank you, Sebi." You know, like they're still each other's interpersonal network. So don't bash social media. I'm not a big fan because you know what it allows them to do is to still talk to their friends. And that is, I think, a really important thing if they have friends that they still visit and go see. But then also they're going to get involved in organizations. So give me some claps. How many of you, your child has already expressed things they want to do when they get to college? Give me a clap. How many of you, your child has expressed like or anybody in here, they're going to be playing a sport? Anybody? We got some sports? Oh, hang on. I like it. I saw his Instagram thing today. I was like, "Oh, good." All right. How many of you, your child's expressed interest in the band or something musical? Give me a clap. Good. You can clap louder. You can own your clap. All right, how many of you, your child's expressed interest in sororities and fraternities? Give me a clap. How many of you, they've expressed interest in intramural sports clubs, things like that? Give me a clap. Good. So the fact they're already talking about it, like this is good. These things are going to highly influence their experience. Highly influence their experience. And then sitting out here is going to be our community. These are going to be all the support services. College orientation is kind of a drag. It's kind of a buzzkill. Like I always look at the orientation, and for those who've gone, I'm like, why are we opening orientation talking about Title IX? Like, is that really how we want to roll here? You know, like it's a part of it. We need to understand how to report sexual violence, but I don't think the opening keynote speaker is on sexual violence. They're like, "You don't?" I'm like, "No, I don't." Like, I think it's a part of it. But the community is going to be all the resources available. It's your job when you think about how to be a prefrontal cortex, you need to know, like, go study the website. Go know every single college campus resource available. Know it all. Now, what I don't want you to do is call, because when you call, we make fun of you. So don't do that. But your job, when your kid has a problem, your job is to give them a solution. When they got a problem, we'll give them, "I'm lonely." Great. Here's a meetup group. Have you looked at this? Have you, like, think of the college website as like a cruise ship. And it is mirrored with resources and availability and fun and all the things you can do. You're allowed to troll on that. But do not get on the parents' page and be like, "What can my son do to meet friends?" Like, we make fun of you too. Like, you don't need to do that. Just know the campus resources. And there are a myriad of community resources available that are out there if you can just help them dig through that. And then sitting out here are rules and policies, federal laws, you know, the things like that. So this influences everything about your child, how they land, when they land, and what it's going to do. For the people who land, who immediately meet friends that they connect with, and then join organizations that they love, and then they're in a community that they love, and then they have a winning football season or whatever it is, basketball, their lives are pretty easy. It's just, when I look at that social ecological model, that is not how I landed. It was like, if there's Simone Biles, I was the anti-Simone Biles. I was like, like I was on all fours, like just skidding into college, trying to figure it out. Everybody's experience is going to be different. And I know we love to get together as parents and be like, oh, they're so happy. They're so happy. Some of them are not going to be happy. And it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard. And sometimes it is really, you're going to have to become a good fake counselor of, I'm so lonely. Well, tell me what you've done today to get out of your room. Like, you're going to have to switch it. Joining a sports team is easy. Army ROTC was easy for Braden because it was this automatic camaraderie. But other people are left trying to figure out how to do that. So social ecological model will tell you a lot of things. Now, I, Lori Hart, focus on two things and two things only. If you can help students get these two things, then we're probably going to be okay. Number one, I want students to have a connected experience. 1938, Harvard University recruited 724 men for the longest study ever done. And for 75 years, they studied these men. Once they got married, they brought spouses in. Once they had kids, they brought the kids in. They were in their homes, their medical appointments, and they studied them. And in studying them, after 75 years, the research was coming out. This was 10 years ago. And I was excited because A, it's Harvard. B, I couldn't get in. And C, research studies aren't 75 years. I mean, they're 75 minutes, days, seconds. And so I was excited. Well, if you've seen the TED Talk, read the book, or looked at the numerous outlets that reported on this, here was a summary of the research. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. And I literally was like, that's it, Harvard? Like, that's what you got? But it really came down to, they were the first group that kind of said social isolation is bad for us, to which now we have a Surgeon General in the last group who jumped on that, and it's now a public health issue. Social isolation is bad for us. Good relationships, they protect our brains, they protect our bodies. And what they found in the research is the people who lived the longest, as they were tracking them, it wasn't necessarily because they were running and eating broccoli. It was because they had people that they could rely on, people they were in community with, that purpose, that passion. Like, it all comes back to that. So when your kids say, well, I want to go to college, I want to go here, the next question for me is always, and what? What about that? And I'm not picking on people because I don't know you, but if they go, and I just want a big SEC experience just to go to football games, it's not enough. It's not enough to cling on to. And what? What do you want to do when you get there? How are you going to make a mark? So keep pushing them in that, helping them think in that of how they're going to make a difference, how they're going to make an impact, because that kind of points back to that Purdue work. They studied these people 10 more years. Who knew that a pandemic was going to hit? And then they came out with the last research last year, and they said social connections are really good for us. I'm like, thank you, Harvard. But it is going to play a major role in your kids when they land, like that ability to connect, to see people, and to have one friend. And if they have no friends, your charge is you need one friend. I want you to come back and give me one friend. And the next day, like, I want you to go look at these 3 things, and you come back and you tell me, what thing could you get involved with? Like, you're going to do some baby steps with them just to get them out and about. Also, I believe that college should be a safe experience. This goes back to my crawling to the blue light and the work that I have done. I'm going to tap on this because you clapped, sororities and fraternities, so I'm going to tell you a quick story. Several years ago, I'm in a group text with all my sorority friends, and I love them dearly, but they talk a lot. Like, there's 55 texts from today, and I don't care what Susan wore to the wedding. I'll be honest, I don't care. Like, they talk a lot. But a few years ago, we got a text from Gail, and Gail said, please pray for Jackson. He's in the hospital. And I was like, oh, God. So it was September. He joined a fraternity. He's 3 weeks in. I knew exactly what had happened. Somebody had messed with. Like, I knew. I was like, phew. Well, I start getting side text and calls because that's what we do as women. We side text and call. I joke, not really. But I got a side call, and it was her best friend, Jennifer. And they're like, Jennifer. She's like, this is Jennifer. You need to call Gail. I'm like, I'm busy praying. Like, I did not want to get involved because I knew I was going to get pissed off. Like, I just was like, and she said, we've had a meeting, and we think you should call. I'm like, why am I not invited to the meetings? They're like, you're never invited to the meetings. I'm like, okay. But she said, this is what you do for a living. I'm like, what do you think I do for a living? She goes, none of us have any idea. But we believe you should call Gail. So I'm like, okay, let me call your best friend. So I called Gail, and she's like, did you get my text? I'm like, yep. She's like, are you praying? I'm like, desperately? I'm like, no, I am calling because people want to know what happened. What are we praying for? And she said, it's a mystery. That's when I knew I was going to get mad. I was like, she said, he was in the fraternity basement, and he was doing squats, and now he's in kidney failure. And I was like, you don't really believe that shit. Like, I'm like in my head, like, I just peed, like I'm like, nah, 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 nah. So I knew something had happened and all the things. So I said to her, I said, Gail, I'm gonna say this gently. Somebody's hurt your kid. And in that basement, it wasn't just squats. I'm gonna bet my savings on it. But here's the thing I need you to do. If somebody did hurt him, right now there's a cover-up going on, and it's gonna be sitting in their group me's. And so in that group me, they're gonna tell Jackson what he's allowed to tell the doctor. That's how sick this is gonna get. And I said, so you need to leave the room. There's a federal law called HIPAA. Like, she like knew none of this. She's like, HIPAA? I'm like, yeah. You need to tell the doctor that your crazy friend Lori called, who never calls you, and Jackson's probably going to be lying about what happened to him, and he needs to go in and get the correct information of what happened to him, and you're never going to know because that kid's never going to tell you what happened to him. And she's like, you think someone hurt him? I'm like, yeah, I just called you. Yes, I think someone hurt him. I will pause here and say this. I, Lori Hart, love fraternities and sororities, and I hope your kid joins a fraternity or sorority because I love them and I believe in them. People who hurt young people are not the people I'm talking about. And if your child is going to join a fraternity and sorority, it is my utmost thought that we have to believe that we are joining organizations that aren't harming people. And if they are, you need to do something about it. You have a moral responsibility as an adult in this world to keep people safe. But we continue to live in this space where women's safety is important, but not necessarily men's safety. 5 days go by, and I'm doing a deep dive. I like called her back the second day. I'm like, you need to report this. She's like, I'm not reporting it. We've been praying about it. I'm like, oh. I'm like, so you're sending him back? And she's like, yeah. And she showed me some group text. I mean, and they apologized and said, we will pay all medical expenses. Like, they were doing this shit. And I was like, Gail, this is the kid that hurt him. Like, Bubba has hurt him. I'm not the FBI here. This is not hard. And so day 5, I at this point had read a book. I had talked to all my fraternity people that I knew would talk to me, like young people. And I went back with her with one last thing, like, and he got healed. Like day 6, they were starting dialysis, and he starts working again. But I said to her, and trust me, she was mad. Jackson got married last year. Guess who wasn't invited? Like, she was still mad. And I said, I'm trying to understand this because this is the work I do. And I believe that these organizations should be doing good in the world. And I just said, if somebody hurts your daughter next year when she goes to college, if she's metaphorically in a basement and somebody hurts your daughter, are you going to just pray about that? And there was this long, nasty pause because, when you really mess up as a parent, you start whispering. Do you know what I'm talking about? You're like, yes. And so she started kind of whispering, and I was like, she said, no. If somebody hurt my daughter, I would report it. I'm going to go hard on this with y'all and say this. The male suicide rate on American college campuses is 4-to-1, men to women. If you have a son in this audience, I'm going to tell you that you need to have high expectations for him and how people treat him. And if you don't, you need to stand up and you need to speak loud and you need to do something. Braden Ebert joined a fraternity a few weeks ago. The first EUL was to the chapter advisor from me. Here's who I am, here's what I do, and here's what I expect. If you have any problems, let me know. And otherwise, I'll be happy to volunteer. And you couldn't afford me otherwise. Like I was literally like, I'm going to help you. But this whole, like, I just watch parents shrink back on this. And I casually hear mothers talk about their sons coming home with cigarette burns on them. I mean, like, just casually. And I'm like, it is harming people. You have a responsibility to report or do something. Federal law was signed December 24th by then President Joe Biden. It's made hazing now a federal law. It will now go into the Jean Clary Safety Act. And universities have a role to increase education, to increase transparency. And I think part of that solution is parents. So when you talk about safety, well, they knew who I was. So, I mean, everybody was swarming there. They were like, our kid. I would say this. I would say you need to have high expectations with your child. The JED Foundation has some work in there about questions for them to consider and ask and think. When your child stops being transparent with you, and I don't talk to Braden every day, I don't track his phone, I'm not in his business, but when you lose transparency, you know that he's gone off the deep end. I know these schools right now at the University of Georgia are recruiting these men right now at Mount Vernon. And I know people are getting bids, and I know these kids are going over there and driving and doing servitude work. And I, as a parent, have higher expectations. And so, here's the good news. If you need a report, you can call me, and I will work around anybody's kid to get them safe. You can call 911 anonymously and do a health and safety check. I've had a parent call me before, and they're like, I think Sam's dying at the Sigma Chi House at Florida State, and I'm like, and I don't know what it was, but I was like, well, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. And then her husband, well, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine. So all you have to do is go online and hit anonymous 911 call to Florida State University, because Andrew Coffey, who died there that I worked with, you have a moral responsibility. And so there's lots of ways to navigate it. But if you want me to shut the shit down, I can in a form of this. I just call and I'll be like, you got 15 minutes to do an interim suspension so we can sort it out. And I've done that many a time for friends. That doesn't mean I solve the hazing problems of the world, but your job is to get pauses on those things when you believe that there's something going on. I have high expectations because I've worked in the industry of men. And I know, and when I say that, I know that when we have higher expectations, I have watched students do better. I have 1,000 success stories about men who will do better if we expect them to. Now, in the same sense, I'll flip it, and this is so gendered that I hate it, but if your daughter's going through sorority recruitment, saw someone yesterday dropping off Girl Scout cookies with my daughter. She was like, oh, that sorority recruitment was the worst week of my life. And I'm like, well, your life must not be hard. I'm like, if your daughter goes through sorority recruitment, here's what's going to happen. She's going to start with 16 or 6, and then all throughout the week, there's an MIT formula that we use called RFM, and she'll be released. She's going to be released. And so I can guarantee you they just get released. But here's the good news. We get released so we can manage the process to get them to the end. Sorority recruitment has a placement rate of 90 to 92%. When you were in college, it was 60 to 70%. Mother's stories continue to dramatize how terrible it is. So I'm just saying, check in with yourself, know what your passion points are, what your purpose is, be transparent with people, and be transparent with your kid. I mean, be transparent. Braden was cleaning one day, and he called me because he's like a Boy Scout. He's like, oh, I hit a car. It was just a dent. He wrote this long note. And I was like, tell me why you were out driving. And he's like, well, I had all the Pledge brothers, and we were cleaning a junior's house. I said, okay. He showed me the pictures. I said, here's the deal. I'm not filing a claim because you feel like you have to undermine yourself and go clean. I'm just not. You're an adult now. There will be things you just have to hand them so that they know that you're not going to fix everything. But in the same breath, I emailed Big Jerry that night, the chapter advisor, and I'm like, what's the cleaning requirements? He's like, they shouldn't be cleaning. Okay, Jerry, then fix it. I have a little bit of it'd be like you're like a cyber tech person, right? If I walked into a computer, I'd be like, my lens is different, but I'm just saying if we can get people's purpose and passion up for that students should not be harmed on sports teams, in bands, it is happening across all sectors, not just one. Okay, so then let's move into this. I'm a buzzkill. Mental health. The old mental health adage. Here's my stack on mental health. So I started with just I have a file that I keep all this stuff because I'm old and like that. But here's all the people that say mental health is a problem. That's a lot of people that would tell us that mental health is a challenge. I think if that's the only story we tell and that's the only story we work through, we're not teaching resilience and well-being. So what I want to flip you in tonight is how do you become the well-being people, not, oh, it's so hard, it's so stressful. American Psychological Association, 2022, this was the headline. Student mental health is in crisis. Campuses are rethinking their approach. Amid massive increases in demand, care psychologists helping colleges and universities embrace a broader culture of well-being and better equipping faculty to support students' needs. We then move into a 2002 study with Lumina and Gallup, who said that emotional stress is by far the most commonly cited reason for stopping out of school emotional distress. Then you move over here to our friends NASPA and UWill, January 2023, 150,000 college students. They said campus mental health continues to decline. 72% said the overall trajectory of campus mental health worsened during the year. You're sending people to places where mental health is challenging for for professionals right now with the landscape of all that is happening in our country. And they're overworked and they are underpaid. 65% said mental health worsened during the year. Top causes for student distress. Now, this goes back to 2021-22. 76 said personal or family. That's like us, like 76%. I'm like, what is wrong with us? You know, but it keeps showing up. I'm like, what's stressing you? And you're like, your family. I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with us? 76% said financial or debt related. 70 said mental health concerns. 66% said academics. They're showing up academically ready. Isn't that funny? Like, but I'm like, are we the problem? So then our friends from Timely MD, and these are all like chronologically, I'm moving ahead to today's time. 1,200 students, Timely MD did some research last year, and they said 7 out of 10 students are experiencing mental health issues such as stress. More than 3/4 report the same higher levels as last year. Top 5 stressors. Mental health. Like, they don't even know what that is. I have a friend who teaches at UCLA. He does all this mental health with young people. I said, how's it working? He's like, it's terrible. Now we're teaching them mental health, and now they just use it against us. They're like, I have anxiety. You can't talk to me. I'm like, shut up. You know, like, I am your anxiety. You know, like, but they all say mental health, and mental health, that's just a broad term for what? Followed by personal finances, academics, and mass shootings. This was one of the first studies where we started to see mass shootings pop up as a true concern for the students. We then look, and we're kind of coming up today. This is like 2024 stuff in August. Everything stresses students out. We're living in an age of anxiety, climate change, terrible wars, toxic political issues. Depending on where you're going to school, you're going to see movements for racial justice, reproductive rights, protests on campus, anti-LGBTQ legislation. There is a lot going on right now as it relates to higher education and the current administration. And I can jump into that if you want to, but there's just a lot going on. The Student Voice Survey conducted by Inside Higher Ed by Generation Lab found 2 in 5% of students say stress is impacting their ability to focus, learn, and perform academically. Again, students aren't showing up saying they can't do the work. I mean, I showed up to college, I just couldn't do the work. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe I would have cited beer. I don't know. But they are showing up academically ready, but the stress is kind of getting in the way. This is also the Gallup research that is newer from, it says college students experience high levels of worry and stress. Every piece of this research I read, it says women, that women are more stressed, women are more this, but I still somewhere go back in my mind, if that's the case, how is the male suicide rate sitting here? Like, are men talking? Are they thinking? Are they, you know, do they feel that they're allowed to be this? Then, Center for Collegiate Mental Health. This is 2024. So this is done out of Penn State. This is not a survey. What they do is they look at who's coming, who's showing up to the college mental, or to the campuses to get a counseling, to go into counseling. And it looks at 213 colleges and universities, over 173 unique college students seeking mental health treatment, 1.2 million appointments, almost 5,000 clinicians. So here's what they say. Let me move ahead. Well, I only have one port that's working, so we'll finish fast. So here's what they say. I mean, we won't finish. I've got 20 minutes. Here's what they say is causing the problems. And it's small, but this is why students are showing up. So here you see the word again: anxiety, stress, depression. Family is number 4, people. Like, what are we doing here? You know, like, we keep showing up. They're not saying academics. I'm like, oh my God, maybe it's us. Maybe we're the problem. But then under family, you got academic performance, relationships, impacting personal function, trauma. And so these are the things. So every piece of research, I whiz that by you to say that we're not seeing much change in those reasons. Tomorrow, let me go here. No, I'm out of order. Tomorrow, JED Foundation just came out with a new report on fraternities and mental health. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow with the JED Foundation. If anybody wants that link, I'm going to give you my email afterwards. If you're interested, it's evidence-based research, and they're smart people at JED. So here's the good news about all this stuff. There is a good news. I wanted to tell you how bad that was to tell you some good news. This was a Gallup study, 2023, and it said, what are your daily emotions? What are your daily emotions? My friend Linda Langford, who's the smartest researcher I know, she always says, troll the data, Lori, troll the data for the good news. Here's the good news. 76% of college students experience enjoyment in a given day. That's good. That's really good. 66% said stress, 51% said worry, 39% loneliness, sadness, and anger. If you are only talking to your kid about stress and loneliness and all the bad things, you might be missing the narrative of where are you finding enjoyment? How are you getting involved? And so I want you to really think about that prefrontal cortex coaching, just not on the negative. My stepdaughter, she is like a hypochondriac. My sister-in-law is a hypochondriac. My mother-in-law is a hypochondriac. It's like a bad drinking game at the holiday. I'm like, I'll give it 20 seconds before an illness comes out. And all they can connect on for their whole lives has been being sick. And they'll be like, oh, I have a scab here. I have and my husband's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But that is how the narrative has been fed, and that is the only thing they know how to talk about. So part of this is figuring out what are your narratives talking about enjoyment and what you're doing and what you're seeing and all those things. The next study, and I love this study, came out last year. And this was also a JED Foundation. It's called the Thriving College Students Research. It was 25,000 students who lived in residence halls. So for many of your people, they're going to live in residence halls. They asked students, what are the behaviors that you're doing that make you happy, that make you fulfilled, that help you thrive? What do you think college students identified? What's making them thrive? What do they need to be doing to thrive? Exercise, keep going. Good. Activities, sleep. Friends. Here they are. People, no, it wasn't on here. But they're fine academically, right? Like none of this stuff is about academics anymore. So it's good news. 10 years ago, it was all about academics. They're not prepared. They're not ready. They're not. And now it's like, no, they're just stressed about something else. I don't know what. Students who said, these are the things I engage in all the time or often to support mental health. They socialize, they spend time outside, they get good sleep, they exercise, they eat healthy, they engage with their faith. These are all the things when you were toting little Darby around in the first grade that you focused on. Think about it. You need to take your nap. You need to get good sleep. You need to eat healthy. You need to go outside. We go to church on Sunday as a family. All of those factors are still the things that students are saying that they need to thrive. So when they come to you, weak and sad or whatever, when have you been outside? When have you eaten last? Like my stepson is going through a horrible breakup right now. It is horrible. 5 years in the making. She cheated on him. I'm like, could you just not have cheated? Like, just break up. It is crushing him. And literally every conversation is, what have you eaten? When have you left the apartment? What are you doing to engage with your friends? Like, because he needs those baby steps right now. For your people, you need to keep them focused on thriving behaviors, not feeding the narrative of the negative. Now, here is the good news. Also, I like the good news of the research. This is Pew Research Center, and this just came out January 25th of 24, so it's hot and new and off the press. And here's what our friends from Pew tell us. It's not going to shock you. Parents are very involved in their young adults' lives. Most young adults are fine with their parents' level of involvement in their lives, except we're causing them stress and all the other research, so I don't get that. In many cases, mothers stand out as who is connected with their children. There was abounding research on the mother seems to be the one connected. We might be the one stalking them. I'm not sure. Fewer than half of young adults ages 13 to 20. This made me like sick to my stomach. Fewer than half of young adults ages 18 to 34 say they're completely financially independent from their parents. This is 34, y'all. 34. Varies widely by age. That's right. That's right. And then 1 in 4 parents. Now, this was interesting because if we listen to stories, we think that parents are tracking their kids all the time and doing all these things. And when you look at the research, 1 in 4 parents say they track their young adult's location. Most of the tracking is done between 18 and 24. And here it shows up again. In addition, parents are more likely to track their daughter's phone than their son's phone because we continue to be more worried about women's safety and not men's safety. That's how I see this show up. But when you really troll into this data, only 4% of parents are really tracking their kids like all the time. I don't track. I don't care. I don't want to. I don't want to know. And people always say, well, what if something happens to him? I'm like, well, then the police will call. I don't know how I'm going to know to help him more. So it's something that you think about because I promise you, once they land, Some of them are not going to want to be tracked, and you need to think about that. All right, so finally, here's how I leave this. This is a little more public health, and we're going to break it down into risk factors, protective factors. I do this with college students, and they're like, oh, yeah, this all makes sense. So like somebody will say, can we do this, or should we do this, or what are we going to do? I don't just go yes or no. As you know, your kids will give you 80% of the information to get the answer they want, and then they're lying to you about the other 20%. So you never give a yes, no. Senior year, I never gave a yes, no. I just was like, tell me more. So we would talk about whatever the thing was that he was being asked to do, and I would talk about, well, what are the risk factors? And then he's able to say, everyone's underage. And then he's able to say the parents aren't home. Then he's able to say the police could show up with a noise complaint. Then he's able to say, like, they're able to give you a risk factor. And the next question is what are the protective factors? What are those things that are going right? We have a sober driver. Like we have, we're going to eat before we go out. We're not going to do shots. These aren't the things Braden said because I wouldn't have listened to that in high school personally. Like, I'm like, okay. When your kid goes somewhere, though, or when they're asking you a question, it is important for you not just to go yes, no, and to break down risk or protective. It is. And you need, my last piece of advice, and this is my higher education self, not my parent self. Your biggest job right now is to teach them how to say no. If they do, or if everything you're trying to do is to make them happy and to make them included and to allow them to do everything that everybody else is doing, and there will be things that you'll disagree with, if you're just trying to make them happy, understand we're missing the equipment of the word no. And the biggest risk factor when we send young people out in the world is they don't know how to navigate yes and no's. They will do it because everybody else is doing it. They will follow what everybody else is doing. And so they need to say no in high school. They need to say, no, I can't do this. They need to say, no, I'm not going to do this. They need to say, no, I'm not going to drink that. Because if they can't do it here, you are setting them up for a lot of failure there. So lean into the no. Lean into the okay of having high expectations for them. Lean into when they leave having high expectations for them. And our job is to help them create purpose. And that means sometimes there's going to be enjoyment in a given day, but there's also going to be stress. And they're not going to be happy every day. But I mean, give me a clap if you're happy every day. Correct. So be okay that we're not all happy all the time, because it is just a really high bar for them that I think it's hard to get to. That's it. That's it. We're done. We're done. This is how to find me. This will just download a dot card, and then you can find me. If anybody is interested in any, or Callie, I might just send you all the kind of research I sent, and you can just pop it out to people. But if anybody wants the JED Foundation webinar tomorrow, just shoot me an email, and I'll send you the link. But thanks for being here. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I took a muscle relaxer yesterday. I want to tell you all this because I hurt my back, and it is like drying me out. So if you're like, that woman's very thirsty, I am so thirsty. I cannot stand it. And for those of you who are going to be empty nesters, I'd like to announce that the Select every Monday has live music. And that's where my husband and I are going right now, listen to a little live music. So life goes on. Life goes on. And Kurt Thomas is a great player at the Select Monday night at 7:30 every Monday. Life goes on. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when they are getting ready to go off, right? If you don't want to just, say, what make good choices and love you, like what can we do between graduation and getting them right? Like, is there like a magic, like, this is what you say, this is what you do, or is it like, let me just make sure you know how to do your laundry and go call Uber Eats or something like what?
Well, what month are we in right now? February? What is it, February? Yeah, between February and May, there's gonna be a lot of social that kicks up with this group. I was shocked by it. I'll be perfectly honest. I was not a fan of a lot of it. I'll be perfectly honest. And I don't mind saying that because I said it aloud a lot. So I think you need to start playing into your risk factors and protective factors real quick. I think the ability for people to know a plan, when they just say, I'm going out to this party, what is your plan? They should be able to identify what their plan is. Because if they're having to identify their plan, then next year they know how to identify a plan. I think also, whatever your expectation is, you still have to be the parent. I mean, I think you have to hold the chain a little bit sometimes. And I don't have a problem with that. It worked for Braden. I mean, I have a 9-year-old, it might not work there. Like she is rough and she's tough and she is rowdy. So it's going to be a whole harder challenge to do that. But Braden was kind of easy for me. So it's easy for me to say all this stuff. But I think the protective factors, the risk factors, the getting to the yes, the getting to the no, to not losing like your moral compass and what this is supposed to be, I'm still a fan of it. And it's just this, the being happy is a high bar because we want them to be happy, but it's just not. They're not going to be happy all the time. And so I would try risk factors, protective factors. What are the things that are going to put you at risk? What are the things that are going to protect you? How could this jeopardize your future? And there's a lot of things I think that could. People do a lot of, they tell stories around alcohol. They're like, well, in Europe, or they go like, well, it's our job to teach them to drink. There's not one piece of parent research out there. And I know the top alcohol researcher, Jason Kilmer, we can call him now, but I call him every year. I was like, is there any parent research on we should teach them to drink? He's like, for the 88th year, Lori, no. But Rob Teresi at Penn State is kind of the researcher out there, Jason Kilmer. And this whole, we're supposed to teach them. I feel like you're teaching them like Twister, and then like the real game is like Dungeons and Dragons. And so the Dungeons and Dragons approach is, I'm going to teach you how to say no. I'm going to teach you how to walk out. I'm going to teach you how to do a good lie. Like if you need to do that. And I guess that's when Braden joined a fraternity. I'm like, I'm going to tell them who they already know who you are. Like, and that was okay for me. Because